Here we go. It is Saturday morning. This is Ideas to Reality, Speed of Thought or Speed of Voice. So got up at 5:30 this morning, started messing around, watched an Alex Hormozy video yesterday based on the recommendation of a friend. I love the stuff Alex, like what he says specifically is do something and then share something. It's talking about building a business with content. And I'm not necessarily interested in building a business with content, but I am interested in getting more feedback around the stuff that I'm creating, seeing where the stuff has an impact. The stuff I'm creating has an impact with people. So one of the challenges I've got is in sort of creating it during walk and talks, like in the mornings, you don't necessarily get a lot of, and especially doing it in an unscheduled way, it goes against all of the conventions of normal content creation, like being consistent, being accessible, being clear, and being niched down. And the niche down aspects of this stuff is like it's literally what's in my like what's in my brain in the moment. Is that right? Like how do we tap into what's in our brain, the stuff that we want to talk about at the moment, and then start to make that useful. The one discipline that I'd like to build into this is doing some post processing on the back end to start surfacing like where are the ideas that are actually meaningful and exciting enough to do enough work to do enough work to be able to have the work make an impact in the long term. So I'm going to mess around this morning, maybe with an hour long walk and talk, um, and then we'll download the video on the back end and then see what actually comes out of the video. So ideas to reality is like how do we start to number one get our moods in the right place, like get ourselves like energetically in the right place where we actually want to put in effort and do the right work or have some of the forcing functions that make it work. So I'm going to talk about some work stuff, like some ways of working that are interesting on the back end. But right, how do we get our mood into the right place where we can actually do the work? Then how do we get up and actually create some exercise? So for me, work means the most when it kind of feels like it's cheating. And I was like, look, I'm doing something that is building towards longevity, which is going out for a walk right now. So it makes me feel better. It makes me healthier. Probably about 1,000 steps for the day right now. I have a goal of 13,500 steps every single day. And then what I could be doing during that time is just thinking, which is great. It's better thinking when we're out walking than we're not walking. Could be listening to something, listening to an audio message. That's number two. Or could be listening to an audiobook, which is a little bit better. It's consuming like condensed material that can be meaningful for people. Or number three, it can actually be creating. And then how we can create is stuff for ourselves, which is clarity of thinking, which is like writing. It could be something for other people. So before this, I did a message to my coach, right? And that's, for me through him, I guess you could say. But yeah, create something or put out content, which is something that can be available publicly to the masses. Maybe takes a little bit of vulnerability to start to be able to put out, but is something that can be consumed with other people. And then what we've got is the creating for our future selves. That's meaningful because we get to use this information in the future and have it bang up against other pieces of information that we're working with. And number four is getting feedback from other people about what is actually meaningful. So as I record this right now, there are 0 people that are listening to this live. It is a combination of the quality of the content, the time that it's getting recorded, and the algorithm just, is not necessarily so don't necessarily get a ton of feedback from it, but do get the internal feedback. It's like, I like talking about this stuff, or this stuff is meaningful, and this is stuff that I could work on long enough for it to make a big difference for people. And so that's what we'll start to work with. So now I work in a corporate space, and then the question becomes like, how do we do, like my big question is, how do we start introducing more asynchronous work into work? And it's funny because email is typically an asynchronous ways of working. The problem with email is it's a catch-all for everything. So you go to your email, you can't just get in and out and like have it be conversational and be responsive back to people. You get like an announcement from somebody, and you get this other request, and you get this other notification. What is this? Science Dogs Club thing. Dogs Club. Dogs Club's come to my neighborhood. DAWGS for the dogs. How do you start to, how do you start to just work outside of meeting structure? So the way what I believe works is one-on-one meetings, which are relationship buildings, being able to connect with people, and I like to do a bunch of those each day, each week. I think that matters. And then asynchronous work. You can get into groups of 3 people that I think can get some work done in a meaningful way. And then everything else should be content that's broadcast out. You can do big event stuff, big event stuff, which is, events that have a live audience, because I think that can make a difference. But create most other things as information that can be consumed with people on their own terms. And I think the real value of asynchronous work is get to create like at times that make sense for me, and then you get to consume it at times that work for you. And as long as we have a rapid enough feedback loop between each other, we get to create things, and we get to do a whole slew of volume of stuff. And I think the challenge happens when it's like, look, I need this thing from you right now, which number one, happens sometimes, but can be a disruptor to both of our loops. Typically waiting to create something that somebody else needs from them in the moment. So how do you start to lots of wind here in the background, so this might be a very difficult one to listen to. Pretty quickly, if this is a problem. There's just an area right now that's a little bit of a wind tunnel, so it should go away in a second here. But yeah, how do you start to work through that, like the asynchronous works, and then how do you start to work in ways that are meaningful for you? So I think in the corporate space, I'm a big fan of Loop. Loop fulfills the promise of I get to create in the place that I want to create in. You get to consume it in the place that you want to consume it in, and then you get actually create. So that's another form of asynchronous work, is we are creating together in different venues, but it all gets away from how do we get work away from meetings, and how do you get work away from meetings and emails. And now I talked about this as like, so what does this have to do with ideas to reality? Like taking our ideas and then turning them into something real. So a big thing that gets away from creative is both from inside a work perspective and from outside a work perspective, is some of those distractions. And some can say the distractions that you have can force more creativity, but how do we free up more mental bandwidth? How do we free up more energy to do those things that are creative, and then serve all particular needs? So I talk about that is one. The easiest place is to say is how do we avoid those things that are mental sucks on us, and those are, I say for me particularly, some people like email. Some people are very functional inside of email. I'm not a big email fan, but I'm much more less of a fan of sitting on digital meetings. Do like in person, like quick connection, things that are supposed to be targeted. So now what a lot of people do is they're like, all right, let's make the meeting better. Let's make sure we have an agenda in place. Let's, like all of these different things. So now we add like a 5x times overhead on top of the meeting, we had a 5x overhead on top of the meeting for planning and infrastructure, and then hoping that everybody shows up. But the problem is, inside of doing that is people don't have that 5x time. Like that 5x prep time is typically people sitting in other people's meetings. So how do we start to ruthlessly free up time with that? So that's where I go into the walking and talking. As this gets captured right now, what it is right now is I have my neck desk on, which is one of those Amazon. If you go to Amazon, you go to phone holders. It's designed for those, like being able to watch your phone like as a TV in bed. Got that around the neck. I have my Aeropex over the ear head, or I think the bone conductor headphones, the ones with the mic, which makes this mic'd correctly. And I've got my iPhone 14 Plus, and then this is getting recorded on StreamYard right now. Typically, if I had a second device, I'd have Otter running in the background, so we'd be able to actually capture this live, because that's the purpose of as we start to go unconscious in these conversations, and that's really the goal, is to go unconscious, to get that unfiltered thinking that comes through on the conversations. How do we process on the back end and be able to separate the signal from the noise, from the stuff that we're working through on the back end? So that's the whole name of the game here, and why we need a second device to be able to do this is because right now when I do live StreamYard, Otter doesn't work as we're actually recording, and it's fine. You can download the video afterwards and then upload it to Otter and can get some of the same impacts on that, but would like it all to sort of flow into a particular system. So I'm repeating something that I repeated before. If somebody's looking at this, is started this conversation with Otter running in the background, and just did a little brainstorm to get everything working. Did a check-in with my coach, went on for a walk, and now doing a live stream. Now Otter's not capturing this, but it will be able to capture on the back end. And then how do you use agents on the back end to be able to sort of decipher what's the valuable piece of this information, and what's not as valuable. So I call this one ideas to reality, and immediately started into topics that might not necessarily be the ideas to reality, but it is what we're doing is basically tapping into the subconscious, and then expressing that through words, which is speaking unconsciously in front of people, which creates a little bit more structure around the conversations. If I'd invest a little bit more time in doing some of the prep, and that's where we talk about this. This is purely asynchronous. Anybody who's joining on here, and now one person's listening, anybody who's joining on here live is experiencing it. Is experiencing this by choice. They did, like, an algorithm to bring them there, so you could say potentially it's not by choice, but yeah, they got brought here to listen to this, and could leave at any point in time. Also have the opportunity to engage more in the conversation. If you leave a comment down below, you can join the live piece of the conversation. But what's happening is it's a witnessing of thinking live. That's all we're doing here, is like thinking live out loud. If I wasn't out for a walk, I would be listening to a podcast, or listening to an audiobook. And some of the different ways to be able to create, and what I want to figure out is how do you code these pieces in conversation into systems that work. So I just watched a video yesterday, which was an Alex Hormozi video, which talks about how do you build a content business. And what he says, in building the content, is do high volumes of quality, very niche specific content, and then do it create it in larger forms. So that is that's what I'm starting to mess around with, and have the focus on. That's another one of the challenges. Have the focus on the people who are listening to the stuff on the back end. The secret about that is you got to have, like, the systems in place to have yeah, you got to have the systems in place to have the focus on the other people, like the other people, and got to work through the logistics of the systems long enough to take the attention off of how we're actually creating, and then putting it on the value for the other people. So there's a little bit of a disadvantage here. I see that one person's listening live as we're starting to crash. I don't know who that person is. I don't know what that person's thinking about right now. I don't know who they're, and that's why we start to like niche down to some of the specifics. So the way that I counterbalance that is I was like, hey, I think the most important thing is to create for people who want to create the ways that they want to create and express in the ways that are most meaningful for yourself. So this is my way of being able to, this is my way to be able to create. This is the one that works for me the best. This may be, I'm happy to share with anybody how I do the creation, and I do and I build out stuff. But also, also as a byproduct, want to intend people to create in ways that are meaningful for you, and create in ways that work for you in the moment, and that are closest to your self-expression. And my litmus test is I can continue to walk and talk for the rest of my life. This is something, as long as I can physically do the walking, as long as I can physically do the talking, this is something that I want to do for the rest of my life, doing all of my creation via walking and talking, and would, outside of working on health, spending time with family and people that I love, I would mold everything work related around this type of work. I can't see myself being more invigorated, more excited than doing some of this work, walking and talking. So the option is, but to do more and more of this, you got to go meet people where they actually are, like in the moment, and people are in different places and are creating in different places, right? So got to spend a bunch of time going out to where people actually are to bring them to where we want them to be. And I still love working inside of a corporate space, but like playing in the edges of playing in the edges of transforming or easing people into ways of working that are more human, are more human. And how I define more human is, ways of working that work for that work for individual people with their individual needs, their individual styles. Wow, what's going on here? Got a block I'm gonna go around this. We got a block on one of the trees here. Oh, one of the trees fell down actually. That's interesting. I've seen a bunch of this when I was in Pennsylvania, but never seen this in the city. Tree just fell down, it's blocking our pathway there. And what else do I want to say about? Oh, we had a heavy rain last night, so I think that might have had something to do with it. But yes, I will. I don't know if I want to leave that one here for right now. It says 18 minutes and 6 seconds. Yeah, I might just leave it here for right now. We'll call this the part of me wants to go longer form, go for an hour or so, and yeah, let me just go a little bit more and then figure out how to parse out some of the different pieces and make them more meaningful on the back end. And now just deciding if we want to go and do a little bit more creation or go back and do a little bit more processing on the back end, which is another way to start to surface some of the different ideas, and to be able to create a digital footprint for what we're working on, and like how do we start to merge all the different all the different things that we started to produce today. How do we start to merge that and make it how do we start to merge it and make it meaningful? So what is what is the what's the we'll take a look at we'll take a look at those. I don't even know what that is. Those are just throwaway words. We'll take a look at those. All right, nobody's listening at this point. Let me just call it end to it. Hope everybody's having an amazing day, and we will speak later.